As the news industry began grappling with the implications of Feinstein's research, I began having problems of my own. Because for the first few years after I lost my leg, I coped extremely well. My main focus was on learning to walk again, getting back to work. I just wanted my old life back. But a few years down the line, my wheels started grinding to a halt. The wave of relief, the wave of euphoria at having survived it all subsided, and the Iraq War quickly faded from the headlines. We found that audiences were just bored of it. They didn't want to hear any more once major combat operations were over. But every time I put on my artificial leg in the morning, I had a very tangible reminder of what I'd been through personally. And I began to develop crippling anxiety, depression, agoraphobia, and worst of all for me, chronic insomnia. And I can completely understand now why sleep deprivation is such an exquisite form of torture. I saw my GP, I was prescribed medication, but that didn't seem to help. And I tried carrying on, pushing through the symptoms, carrying on working, even though I knew that I was getting worse, not better. And after suffering for more than 2 years, I finally hit rock bottom. I was losing hope of ever recovering. And so, in desperation, I called my editor, told her what was going on, and the BBC agreed to pay for inpatient treatment for PTSD in a hospital that was, I've got to say, disappointingly short of the rock stars and reality TV stars that I'd been promised would be there. I spent 2 months as an inpatient. And looking back at that time, I would have willingly sacrificed my other leg in return for being spared the psychological injury. And that may sound like an exaggeration, but I assure you it isn't. Because losing a limb changed me physically, but it didn't change who I was. I still took pleasure from the same things as I did before. I could go to bed at night, sleep well, and wake up in the morning looking forward to the day ahead. But when PTSD kicked in, it fundamentally changed who I was as a person. And the fallout for that was far more profound and far more long-lasting than the physical injury, not just for me, but for the people closest to me as well. And the most difficult part of my recovery is that it wasn't neat and linear. When I asked the medical profession for a time frame, how long will it take me to get better, they weren't able to give me one. What works for one person, as you know, won't work for another. When I lost my leg, the recovery process was surprisingly straightforward. I underwent an amputation, I started physical rehab. A couple of months later I started walking again, and 6 months down the line I began easing myself back into work. Recovery from mental illness, though, rarely follows a straight trajectory like that. I had good days and I had bad days. I had days when I could concentrate and work effectively, and days when I could barely bring myself to look at the front page of the newspaper. And that made predicting what I might be capable of from one day to the next incredibly difficult. And to this day, I couldn't tell you what worked for me in my recovery. I find that very frustrating because I work in a profession that likes straightforward narratives, preferably sound bites of less than 20 seconds or less. We like a journey, we like a sense of achievement at the end. But recovery from PTSD is usually anything but straightforward. And whether it was the medication, the therapy, just the passage of time, the combination of all three that helped me the most, I still couldn't tell you. One thing that I do know is that support of fellow journalists who fought their own demons was hugely important to me, because it gave me a sort of emotional lifebuoy to cling to when I felt like I was drowning. When I was at my worst, I received an email from a well-known foreign correspondent who's always a close friend. He'd stuck by me throughout the whole process and counseled me to hang in there and never lose hope. And he said to me, and it's always stuck with me, the big mad world will still be there when you get back to work, and it will still be fucked. A decade on from that email, looking at the world around us today, I think you'll agree that his analysis was pretty much spot on. But over time, the peaks and troughs started to level out. And I remember very clearly a day about a year after I was discharged from hospital, when I sat down on my computer and I was able to write a short script, 45-second script, with the same clarity of mind and the same fluency that I was before I got ill. And it was a simple task. It's the sort of thing I've done for 15 years, every day, without really thinking. But the sense of achievement and relief, just sheer relief, was overwhelming, because I finally felt that I was coming out of it, finally coming out of the darkness. If I cast my mind back to 2003, when I was told I was going to lose my leg, a number of memories are particularly vivid to me. And many of them centre on how my family responded as they tried to make sense of everything that had happened. One nephew made an artificial leg out of Lego and gave it to me when I was in hospital. And another niece and nephew drew pictures of their uncle in his new state. And I remember my own reaction when the plaster cast was removed from around my stump for the first time. And I prepared myself for that moment. I knew that I was going to be shocked, but I didn't appreciate just how shocked I was going to be. I was shocked that I was shocked. And it was only later that I realised why. Because in my mind, when a part of your body gets broken, you go to the hospital, they put it in a cast, and when the cast is removed, what was broken is fixed. And the cast, the plastic cast, acted as a barrier, a physical and psychological barrier, protecting me from the full impact of losing a limb. And when it came off, I was suddenly hit full force by the realisation that my leg wasn't going to come back. This was the way it was going to be every day from here on in. Looking back at that time, I'm struck by how my reaction, and particularly the reaction of those around me, was shaped by that belief that I could be put back together again, that a sense of physical completeness could be restored. One phrase I heard many times: they can do amazing things with prosthetics nowadays. You can compete for the Paralympics now. So many people told me they wanted me to achieve more than I had before. And so when I began my physiotherapy, I set my sights on buying a very expensive, custom-made silicone leg from a well-known company in Dorset. I didn't want anybody to know who looked at me for the first time that I was any different to anyone else. I just wanted to look the way I did before. But as time went on and I started to adjust to the new reality, I realised that becoming whole again isn't about replacing what's missing. It's about working with what's left. Feeling whole again isn't like changing the tyres on a car, taking off what's broken and replacing them with new. It's much more intangible than that. So in the end, I never did buy that silicone leg, because I knew it couldn't replace what I'd lost. And I decided to spend the money instead on something that would give me far more instantaneous gratification. When I was asked to speak here at a conference about blast injuries, I started thinking about what it means to be whole. So I went to the dictionary and I looked at a definition. It said, whole, in an unbroken or damaged state in one piece. I thought that definition doesn't work for me, because I've been damaged, I've been broken, physically and psychologically, and I'm certainly not in one piece. But the dictionary also had another definition in the noun form of the word. Whole being a thing that's complete in itself. No mention there of things being unbroken or undamaged. Something that's complete in itself, warts and all. And that was much more close to the definition that I was looking for. Now, more than anyone else, there's one person who fosters that sense of wholeness that I've been looking for since I was injured. This is him. This is Billy, my son, who's just turned 12, kitted up in my body armour just before I went to Libya last year. Apologies to the military personnel amongst us. His trigger discipline isn't great. But, and the gun's not mine. Journalists don't carry weapons. It's strictly non-combat. And sometimes when I'm out and about with Billy and I'm wearing shorts, people turn and stare, especially children. Some will come up to me and ask me what happened, and I'm fine with that. First question children normally ask is, are you a robot? And 9 times out of 10, the second question will be, how much did it hurt? Not, did it hurt, but how much did it hurt? And the more grisly I make the story, the more they enjoy it. Billy there, though, can't understand what all the fuss is about. I don't blame him. He was born more than 3 years after I was injured, and he's never known me any different. I do occasionally get a sign that he's proud of me, though. Billy's just started secondary school in September. And during his first week, he was asked by his new teacher to write a bit about himself so she could get to know him a bit better. And in his exercise book, he wrote, "Dear Miss Barry, my name's Billy. I used to go to Urbane Primary School. My hobbies include drawing, reading, skating, and basketball. My favourite animal is a cat, because they're independent but still loving." Then he went on, "A fun fact about my dad is that he's got one leg which he lost in Iran because he works for the BBC. I was delighted that he considered a life-changing injury, a life-threatening injury, as a fun fact. I also had to get the atlas off the shelf and correct him. It was Iraq, Billy, not Iran. They're different countries. Fake news. But I was happy to see Billy describe my injury as a fun fact to his teacher, because it meant he doesn't define his dad by what's missing. It's just not a big deal to him. His dad is the person who's still there. I'm going to finish with a final picture and a final thought. This is Corinthos by Barbara Hepworth, which is on display at Tate Britain. In a commentary about the work, Jeanette Winterson, the novelist, says, "The whole that marks the place of entry is not defeat, it is experience. It reminds us there is always a way through. The whole is a way back and a way forward." And 15 years after my last injury, which I accept is not as severe as some of the people in this room, let alone Joao or Giles, who we've seen. But 15 years on, that quote does resonate with me. That spot in Iraq, in Kifri, where I lost my leg, doesn't mark a place of defeat for me. Many people, surgeons, prosthetists, family and friends most of all, help me find my way through. Because even in the direst of circumstances, there is always a way forward. Thank you for listening.